Welcome to A Watchman's Journal. I'm Diana Larkin. Thank you for joining me today. I have another new guest to introduce to you. Her name is Callie. She came across my Twitter feed, which is X now, and we just developed a bond. And I have watched her as she has journeyed out of the valley of the shadow of death. And I want her to share her experiences with you because I know it's going to strengthen you and encourage you. So, this is Callie Simons, everyone. Callie, thank you for saying yes and coming on.
Thank you, Diana. It was definitely something I was like, oh no, but it's like I felt called to do it. I felt called to share my story. I've felt called this whole time to
Mhm.
share my story. And so this is just another step in doing that. So thank you for asking me on today.
Oh, absolutely. The Holy Spirit just highlighted you.
Oh, so sweet.
Well,
And I also want to say too before we start, like I just need to say thank you publicly for everything that you've poured into me over the past 3 years. I know our entire group on Twitter would say the same. And I just need to echo those blessings back to you because I would not have made it through without you, without some of these people that have come around me and supported me. So I also just wanted to publicly thank you.
well, you are more than welcome. It has been an honor to watch God bless you and deliver you and just love on you.
Thank you.
It is a sweet and precious and powerful group that has developed on the X channel. You
It
know
really
what,
is.
what the enemy probably introduced to be a distraction to people has become a giant blessing and a
Yes,
place to shine our light. And
absolutely.
yeah, so it's been good. Well, let's jump in and tell us your
Okay.
story.
Well, I think I wanted to start just like with the foundation, which would be going back to my childhood, just really quick. I think you kind of have to have that in order to know where we're going. But because I was really raised in the church, I accepted Jesus Christ as like a 4 or 5 year old, just very, very young. It was always very real to me. I remember growing up
Mhm.
with stories of like people in my family would be seeing angels and would be seeing demons. And so the supernatural, I always had very early experiences of that. And we went to church every Sunday, every holiday. We did youth group, we did Awanas, we were very involved. But it was kind of that daily like rote, I think is the word that some people have started to call it. Just you go to church, you sing 3 songs, you do communion, you just do the steps. And
Mhm.
it wasn't really like personal for me.
Yeah.
And you're little, like that's fine. But that kind of became harder as I got into high school. When I was a sophomore, my dad, we had some started to have some issues with my dad, and it became clear that he had a substance abuse problem. And so I was actually in a car accident, a very bad car accident with my siblings. I was taking them to school because my dad couldn't take them to school, and I was in a car wreck. And honestly, I probably like we should have been injured. I think our guardian angels saved us and protect us. But that was really like a defining moment in my life because after that, my mom realized this is not good. I need to deal with this. And so it led into them. Basically, she kicked my dad out. He was not getting help. He was not doing the things he should be doing. He was endangering us. And so it ended up in a divorce. And, when we had that first conversation with my mom telling me like what's going on, of course, we didn't know everything. They
Yeah.
had done counseling, we didn't know any of these things. So that night when after we were all very upset, obviously. We didn't want our dad to be gone. We didn't want this to be happening. It was very traumatic. But that was really the first time I went to God and I was like, what is happening? Like, this is so bad. I need you to explain what's happening. And I opened up my Bible and I opened it up to Ephesians 5. And it's a Bible verse about do not get drunk with wine. And I think it talks about it, then it leads to debauchery.
Wow.
Um, and that was my like first experience of like seeking the word of God, opening it up, and it's like there's actually an answer here. Like that was amazing to me. I just, of course, you just break down when you get those words from God. And then I also started to, I'm very musically inclined. So I've always been in choirs and all those kinds of things. And so God's always talked to me through music too. So then I would
Mhm.
start to, when I would be driving down the road, a song would come on the radio and it would just like shred you, you just feel
Yeah.
the presence of God. And so
Mhm.
really started to kind of have these encounters with God. Although I didn't really understand what that was. You're young, you're like, okay, what is that? But it was so overwhelming and so fulfilling that it was like, I want to do more of that. So kind of that all kind of set me up for college. Went off to college. I went to a small liberal arts college. And at the time, people probably don't know this and wouldn't even believe it, but I was very shy. Like I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to call people and like on customer service. Like, no, my mom, you do that for me. Like, I am not doing that. I was so shy. And I was a like bookworm. I always got good grades and I was on honor rolls, but I had to work hard and I had to study a
Yeah.
lot. So that was a lot of my time in college, even in high school too. But then in these college classes, all of a sudden I started getting like F's, and it was mainly from an English professor who obviously did not appreciate my conservative
Wow.
viewpoints.
Wow.
So this is really when I started like getting some persecution, like personal persecution.
Yeah.
And looking back, I can see this is where God started showing me to stand up.
Mm.
And so it ended up where I was like done. I was so upset. And my mom was like, you need to take this to the dean. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I was a shy little college sophomore, fresh. I think I even might have been a freshman. Did not want to do that, but I did it. And he was very like, this doesn't seem right. We'll look into this. And I think my grade maybe got raised a little bit. I was able to like redo the assignment or whatever. I didn't, nothing overnight shifted,
Mhm.
but then like a year or two later, that professor actually ended up getting fired.
Ah,
So I started to
interesting.
see that
Aha.
standing up, taking
Yeah.
action, not just taking it, but actually like doing something about it
Yes.
started to have some effect. And so it just kind of set me up then to go out into the workforce. So
Hmm.
that was hard because I graduated then from college into the recession that was happening in
Oh,
2008. I
yes.
graduated in 2009 and I had a job, but it wasn't like a real job. It was like a contractor position. And so I didn't get benefits. I wasn't treated like a real
Yeah.
employee. It was
Yeah.
just hard. It was such a hard
Hmm.
period. And I found another job after that one, which really set me up for what I'm doing now. But they paid me peanuts. Like it was just so hard of like getting out there into the real world. And then that's also when I got married. So right after college, I got married. I did marry my high school sweetheart. So we'd been together since we were 15,
Wow.
very extremely young. That relationship had its ups and downs for sure. Some were pretty bad downs, but I didn't really see like a huge problem. We were so young. I just thought he'll get
Yes.
over it. He'll grow up. We're gonna get out of this like immature phase. Um, and I also knew a lot about his childhood. He'd had a very traumatic
Mm.
childhood, and so I kind of made excuses, and I really tried to
Mhm.
help him like heal from some of that. I didn't really understand that's what I was doing, but you love someone and you don't want them to
Mm.
hurt anymore, and so I did a lot of that. And growing up in the church, my understanding of like a wife was this like the standard narrative of like be submissive, respect him, honor him even when he doesn't deserve it. You still do
Mm.
that. Win him to God through meekness, like all these kinds of things that we've all heard. We all know exactly what we're talking about. So I would read all these like Christian marriage books, and I would read like counseling materials and like try to improve this relationship as we like got married and got settled into a house. And I was always kind of get this in my spirit. Like I was just not doing enough. I wasn't nice enough when we'd have an argument. I would say the wrong thing and then it would escalate, or I wasn't respecting him enough. I wasn't doing a good enough job of that. And so you just always kind of felt like it came back on you. And
Mhm.
it was kind of that religious spirit looking back now. I see that.
Amen.
Yes, it was that religious spirit that's just like, you're not good enough. You're not doing enough. You're doing the wrong things, all that kind of thing. And so it really wasn't getting better. And then we started having kids in 2014. We had our first son, and things actually really got worse in terms of like
Wow.
fighting and just getting out of control a lot. I think that like stress, the financial burden, like when there's cracks in the ground and then there's rain and storms and those cracks become deeper and then you can't really ignore them anymore.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, this is not getting good. There's whatever I'm trying to do, the loving, the respecting, it's clearly not working. It's not making things any better. And then I had another life defining moment for me. It was in 2017. I had my son was 3, and I had a 1 year old, my daughter, middle daughter. And we had another argument. And this was the first time things really got physical. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. It was a crisis moment. And I needed to seek help, like outside of me, because it was just the things I was capable of was not helping any longer. And so, and then the other big part of it too was like now my kids were involved. They had
Yes.
seen this whole thing. So I was actually like in our nursery with my 2 kids, closing the door with like holding the door shut. And he was like cracking the door jamb to get into the room. So finally I like open the door and he like drags me out in the living room, just like raging the whole time. I mean, it was just so terrifying. I can't even explain in those moments how, but you're afraid you're going to get hit. You're afraid you're going to go whatever. You just like do whatever you can do to just get it to stop in that moment. And so my kids saw that whole thing. It was just absolutely horrible. And I just knew that I had to do something different. And so I think maybe it's my education, but my MO is just like, can't figure it out, go research. Like, and I think that it was setting me up too for this whole like thing that we're going through like right now. But so I just like did all this research, get all the information, sort it out, think about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, throw that out. And doing all that research, I came to understand that like this was actually abuse. This wasn't just,
That's,
oh, we're having bad arguments.
no.
There was a cycle to this.
Mhm.
It wasn't just hurtful words. Like this was actually psychological abuse.
Mhm.
And I always thought abuse, you had to like be hit, you had to there's some kind of physical evidence of that. And I started to learn that sometimes those psychological things can be even worse than
Yes.
those physical wounds. And so I also, in that research, I found this book. So Boundaries in Marriage is what it's called. It's by Henry
Mm.
Cloud and John Townsend. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
Yes, I am.
but it was like a smack across my face. Is what I tell people.
Wake up call.
Yeah, it was a wake up call. It was like, are you going to hear this or not kind of moment. And if you don't get this, you're going to like not live, is basically where it was. And so really felt like God put that in my life at the time. And it really just began as I read it. I was like, oh my gosh, all the narratives, all the things that I'd been told, they're all lies. They're all lies. This is not, you're not called to be submitted to sin. No,
No,
nowhere in the Bible does it say submit to sin. That
no.
does not in the Bible. In fact, we are called to shine light on the
Mhm.
sin and to help people. I mean, that's what Jesus did,
Yes.
right? He was like, you're sinning. Stop. I love you. I don't want this for
Yes.
you. Go and sin no more. So it really just, and then it also gave me all of these strategies on how to put up boundaries,
Yeah.
because that's really what we need, right? When we're in these situations, I didn't know what boundaries were. Like that is not something that I grew up learning about. That
No, I
was,
didn't grow up with those either. And it was a shock to find out oh my gosh, this is a much healthier way of living, not only for
Yes.
me, but for the other people in my life.
Yes. 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 And I had experienced this in college and in high school. And I think because I'm a loyal, responsible person, you expect those people to be that way back with you, to
Mhm.
reciprocate. And that just wasn't happening. And that led to so much hurt and drama and all these things. And so I began to see, like, oh, this is why I don't have any boundaries. I'm just letting people just walk all over me.
Mhm.
And so, but even more than that, these boundaries and things, what the book did was it allowed me to put down this burden that I had been carrying. And it was like this, you're not a submissive wife. And it took that off. And it's like, I don't have to be a submissive wife because I'm living in a marriage that's covered in sin right now.
Mm,
And so I was allowed to take that off. And because I always thought I was being obedient, like, oh,
yeah.
I'm doing what I should be doing because I'm being submissive and I'm submitting to this. And then it took that out of the picture. And now I could actually stand up and now I could take steps without being, oh, you're being disobedient. Because I knew what the Bible said
Mhm.
about the situation. So that was definitely a moment. And it was also very hard because then I was putting all these boundaries in place. And of course, somebody who doesn't like boundaries, they're just going to rage. They're just
Mhm.
going to lose their crap. And
Mhm.
so, my husband would just absolutely rage. He would just lose his mind. And then we would leave and we'd come back and he'd be calmed down. And so it took a long time and it took a lot of practice because this was not something that I knew how to do.
Yes,
It was very hard to stick with it. But once I was consistent enough, my husband started to realize, like, okay, she's not gonna stop.
this isn't a phase.
Yeah, this is gonna continue. So I better figure this out. And so he did make positive changes. I do have to give him credit for that because he stopped. He, instead of punching walls, he would go to the basement and chill out. So really did see some positive things. And the physical scary stuff pretty much stopped for the most part. So then I felt like it was safer to stay. And then the other thing that happened at the same time was I had started seeing a counselor because I just thought I need somebody else
Yes,
to weigh in.
right.
That's wise. I think that's wise. And I
Very
think the Bible
wise.
talks, I think there's a scripture that talks about seeking the counsel of others. So I started doing that. Honestly, she was not that helpful, but she was a sounding board and helped me process everything
Yes.
that I was walking through, which was helpful. But I think her role, looking back now, when she heard everything what had happened, why I was there, she reported that incident to DHS. So they're mandatory
Oh,
reporters.
yes.
And so I was really not happy about that.
Yeah.
That created, like, my world kind of exploded. My husband was not happy about that one. You kind of like lose trust. You're like, wait, I came to you for help and you're reporting me to DHS. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But honestly, DHS, we had to go through it. It was fine. They just want to see the kids throughout all of these. DHS has come to understand that I'm a good mom, that I am
Okay.
doing the right steps. And because I was seeing the counselor, I could say, I'm doing stuff to try to fix this.
Mhm.
I'm protecting my kids. We're leaving if stuff gets dangerous.
Mhm.
And so there was like a plan in place. So
Okay.
it didn't really go anywhere from there. So that was good because that could have been not good.
Yes.
Could have been not good. But and also too, I think this was now things were on the record. And I think
Mhm.
for where we were going, that needed to be done. And so looking
Uh,
back now, I can see that this whole thing was meant to happen for a very specific reason. And obviously, you don't understand those things when you're walking through it, but looking
yeah.
back, you can see it. So we kind of continued, kind of just kind of fighting through that sludge. A couple more years. I got pregnant for the third time. Um, we'd take some steps forward and then we'd have a couple steps back. But you're busy. You're like living. You're not like, oh, what am I gonna do about my marriage? You're just trying to
Yes.
survive. You've got two young children. you've got a job, you've got responsibilities, bills, you're just trying to survive
Yeah.
every single day. But then when we had our third baby, things started to get more stress, more burden,
Mhm.
all those good things. And it started to kind of get bad again. And so I basically forced him to do couples counseling because I had to do something.
Mhm.
Um, that really didn't go well. Didn't really result in any major changes. But I kind of just started to see that we were kind of at this plateau too. Like I
Mhm.
started to kind of see we're probably not going to get past this unless something major happens on the part of my husband. I was really willing to do whatever I needed to do.
Mhm.
Um, and even back then, like I would forgive and I would love and I would try to do the hard things, even when he would not. So I was trying to do the right things. And I think that was training ground for my future. So, and then 2020 hit. And, it was kind of like, oh, what's going on? I mean, I think we all felt that one.
Yes.
And so you just kind of took the eyes off of that whole like battlefield and you're like, oh, there's this whole other battlefield over here that we now need to go over to. And so, in a lot of ways, that maybe kind of healed a little bit. Like we had a common enemy now. So we weren't each other's
Ah,
enemy.
okay. Mhm.
And we did agree a lot on like we both had supported Trump. We both voted for him in 2016.
Okay.
We were very aligned. There was a lot of unity on that front.
Okay.
So we could see, like, we knew the media, everything going on with President Trump. Something is off here. This is not right. But we trusted him. He had done good things. And so when he started putting out like Fauci and the task force and he shut things down, we were like, okay, I guess this must be the right thing. And so we did everything. We shut down, we took our kids out of daycare, we stayed home, we didn't see our family members. That was really hard. And we had three young kids at that time. It's like they can't go to school and see their friends. My son missed his last semester of kindergarten.
Oh,
Like we are still dealing with the school things that the kids
wow.
didn't get to do because they were just shut down. Like there's long reaching things that this has impacted in our kids. But and then the other thing was at the same time, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
And so then we kind of
Wow.
felt like we couldn't even like see her because we were told that this virus, like, she
You
was
could kill her.
immunocompromised. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
basically, exactly. We thought we were going to kill her. But at the same time, she wanted to see her grandkids and she wanted to see us because it was like stage 4 cancer. Like,
Oh,
you may
wow.
not come out of this. It was a very real
Wow.
possibility. And so we just had all of this back and forth, and it was really hard. And then at the same time, we just started having like all these family problems. This problem over here with this family member. We had problems with our house, the kids, and like just like we couldn't go to the playground. Like when I think back on how ridiculous some of this stuff was, we couldn't go take our kids to the playground. It was just absolutely insane. So all that stuff really starts to add up pretty quick. We had house projects we had to do, all these things. It was really just like hit after hit after hit. And then we started to see like they were shutting down the churches, but they're not shutting down Walmart and they're not shutting down the
Mhm.
bar. And then Black Lives Matter
Mhm.
came on the scene and we were like, that's not a coincidence. We've got all this stuff happening. And then here comes
Yeah.
this, like, obviously evil, like, very obvious evil. And then, we started up with all the election talk and the ballots, and Trump was like going off about how they're going to do all these nefarious things. And I was like, oh no, like, there's something going on here that's very bad. And so we really were awake to that. And we were like, we're not just going to take this. So this is really where my training and standing up started to be playing out. And so we like stopped masking. We started like I was very active on social. And I used to be the girl like I wouldn't like comment on a controversial post because I didn't want to get attacked in the comment section. But I would now like full, like just doing it. Like, I don't care. I'm saying it. And so, friends and family were like, what's going on with you? Like, you're crazy. You've lost your mind. Like, they were calling us racist because we didn't believe in Black Lives Matter and like all these things. So like we were united and all of that. But then you like go to the grocery store and you're the only one not wearing a mask in the
Mhm.
entire grocery store, and you're getting sneered at and you're getting yelled at. So that was a lot of pressure, on like external pressure coming
Mhm.
on us. And so, and the same thing, like they were masking our kids at daycare. And
Mhm.
I fought that one for so long. And I think that's actually something that Holy Spirit's bringing to me, because I was not planning to talk about this today. But that was really one of the first times that I saw the power of like a declaration.
Ah,
So it was May, it must have been May of 2021,
okay.
maybe. And it was starting to get hot out, and they were making the kids wear a mask outside. And it was like 90 something degrees. And I was just like, enough. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So I went home and I sat in my garage in my car, and I just was like, you're done, devil. No more. No more. And I was like praying, and I was like making all these declarations about how this was not going to happen anymore. I went inside, I sat down on my computer, and I wrote out an email to the like owner of the daycare, and I put all these like scientific studies, masks don't work, like, all this evidence, this very long email. And at the very bottom of the email, I was like, basically, I had this like personal appeal then, like, because they're saying is put kids first. And so I basically was like, why don't you put the kids first? Instead of putting your staff and the state of Iowa and all these other people first, I'm asking you to put the kids first and stop this. If parents want their kids to wear them, they can wear them. That's great. Go ahead and do that. I do not want my child doing that any longer. So please respect the parents' wishes and our children and change this policy. And then, I ended it. So it was a very forceful emails, but it had evidence, but it was also very respectful. I tried to rein it back, and I was trying to be as respectful as I could. Literally the next day, the owner pulls me aside and says, we're going to end this mask policy today.
Wow.
And I was dance. I mean, you try to keep your cool in front of the person.
Mhm.
I got in my
Mhm.
car and I was dancing. I was praising God. I was just like, hallelujah, hallelujah.
One brave voice speaking up turned the corner, switched the tables, brought
Yeah.
down the house of cards.
Yeah.
Everybody listen up.
Yes. And I don't know if it was like the scientific studies or like what it was, if it was just, but whatever it was, broke something. It was probably those declarations. I was like, because I'm a mama
Yep.
bear, like I
Laid
can
the
handle a
groundwork.
lot, but do not touch my children.
Mhm.
Just don't, or you're going to seriously regret it. I will come after you with all of heaven backing me. So watch out. And so I think it was just my like, you're done. No more.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yep.
So going back to the election, everything, November 3rd happened. I was like very aware. Woke up the next morning. It's like very obvious, like immediately. The media's in on it. The
Mhm.
courts are not looking at any evidence, just everything very clear. Oh, they stole this thing. And I had seen the importance of the election, and I was like joining prayer calls. I was interceding. I didn't know it was called interceding at the time, but I was interceding. And so it's like, you're just like, God, we need your help,
Yes.
like repenting for our country, like all this stuff. And I was confused. How could he lose? Because the
Mhm.
Bible says that when two or more agree, it shall be done. And so I'm like, there's hundreds of thousands of people praying, Christians praying for Trump. How how is this possible? And so that again sent me really seeking God. And there was a couple weeks right after that election, I was just like, you have got to give me understanding on this, because this is not what the Bible says. This is not what you have been speaking to me. So I need to understand. And so then right after that, I started to find all these new sources of information. And it was like Flashpoint. And it was just like coming in my Facebook feed. So obviously it was not me, it was definitely God thing. Um, I didn't know prophets still existed. Like that was not something I
Yeah.
knew about. I mean, when we went to church, we didn't have prophets prophesying. So I was like, wait, what? This can't be right. No. But they would like show up in my YouTube feed. So I would start watching them. Actually, one of the first ones was Albert Milton. And I think that you've seen some of his stuff.
Yes, I have. He's very sweet spirit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And it's like just showed up. So I'm like, okay, I want to start listening. And they were all talking about Trump. Trump, God's hand is on Trump. And then when we went over, they did the like Twitter purge, the whole thing.
yes.
So then we went over to like Parlor and I was finding new people there. And I think that's actually where I found Pastor Dave
Okay.
in his glory. So then I started watching them all the time. And then there was this pastor on YouTube, or no, Facebook. It was Facebook. And he was praying this prayer to fall out of agreement with like the demonic. And I didn't even know like
Wow.
that was a thing. Like I didn't know I needed to do that. But I was like, okay, I'll pray it. It's obviously God's putting this pastor in front of me for a reason. And so I prayed his prayer. It was very simple. But I literally felt like scales just fall from my eyes.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
think why so many people cannot accept truth right now, even 3 years later, I think that is the reason why, is because they
Yes.
have not fallen out of agreement with the
Yeah.
things that they didn't even know they agreed with, but they
Hmm.
have. And so that was so powerful. So then I was able to actually like receive these prophets and these things that I was learning from these pastors that I started to find online. And so the other thing that was just so powerful was Kat Kerr was on Flashpoint like right after the election.
Oh, yes.
And she started to actually prophesy, like not
Uh-huh.
just like God told me this, like actually like came on full force and she was like
Yes.
screaming.
It
And it
was,
was, do you remember that?
oh my gosh, it was electric. The
Yes.
atmosphere was
Yes.
electric. It was like God is speaking. Everybody, listen up.
Pay attention. And I just sat there like I was literally like fear and trembling, fear of the I know what the fear
Yes.
of the Lord feels like because I felt it that day.
Yes.
And she was just talking about like stand up, speak the truth. Like it was just over and over and it was very clear what God wanted us to do. And so I'm like, okay, I guess that's my call. I guess that's what I'm being called to do. And I was not really happy about it because I didn't. I from earlier in 2020, I knew what that was gonna mean. I knew like my sacrifice. I was sacrificing my
Yeah.
reputation. I knew that was gonna be hard. But I was like, you have a choice, yes or no. I mean, and it's just like, well, I'm not gonna say no to God. Like, of course,
Yeah.
yes. So when push comes to shove, I think that's the story of my life. When push comes to shove, I always say yes to God. But yeah, and then it was like, so I started sharing the truth, all this
Okay.
stuff, this is a lie, that's a lie. And then I was learning all these things. So I was kind of getting red pilled. I know that's like the phrase everyone uses. At the same time, I was over on Telegram and all these different things. And when I was on those other platforms, I started to see the Patriots were all sharing Kim Clement's prophecies about
Ah,
Trump.
yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is I mean, he is just amazing,
He
just
is.
absolutely amazing. If you want to
Yeah.
talk prophet of prophet of prophet, Kim Clement.
Hmm.
And so then I kind of went down the Kim Clement trail. I ended up finding Delora. And so then she kind of opened up some other avenues. And so it's just kind of like this web, like you just start all these
Yes.
different people and then they interview different people and you start following them. And that's how I actually found you, Diana, was you were on His Glory that first time.
Oh, okay.
And so I started following you on Twitter right after that. And so, yeah, it's just like this web. And then it's just like, okay, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But the thing that really got me because of how I was educated and my past was they were all saying the same thing.
That
And
is astounding. It really is to me. There's never
yes,
been a time in church history when so many prophetic voices are hearing the same thing.
Yes. And it was there, some were like military intel and some were like Q on all these like anons. I was like, what is this thing? And then like Kim Clemens prophecies, and then all these new
Yes.
prophets I was doing. And they were all saying the same things.
Mm,
And that got me. That got me. It's like one person, like, okay, you're crazy. But when multiple confirmations, it's like, okay,
yeah.
there's something here. And I think this is the answer to what I asked God about several months back, like what is going
Um,
on.
yes.
And so I started to get that answer.
Hmm.
Like, there's a plan here. It's really big.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a solution. There is something. And so that was by the end of 2020, definitely like fully awake. Also a little bit like, yikes, you're a little like, okay, great,
Yeah.
but now what?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of is where I would say really where I picked up with like you and the tribe on Twitter. And just because what would happen was I would get banned on Facebook and I'd get banned on Instagram. And so then I'd go over to Twitter, and it was still at that time, Twitter was still not great, but it was better than
Right.
Facebook. So I started spending more and more time. And I think that was probably God, like, go over there,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
over there. So I would go over there. And so just that group there, I think it's
Yes.
the everyday, Diana. And I think that's why you're different from a lot of people. I know it's like you and there's Julie Green and there's a couple, but it was that we need this every day to
Yeah.
keep us going because
Yes.
this is so hard.
It
So
is.
hard. We need that encouragement. And then I started to see like it's not just getting your word. Like there's people here. There's real people here who are also
Mhm.
going through the same kinds of things, and we can
Mhm.
support each other and we can really help each other and pray. I tell people it's kind of like a Bible study. Like we're praying for each other. We're encouraging, we're lifting
Yes.
each other up. So it's just happens to be online, and it just happens that I've never seen any of these people before in my entire life, but I still love them the same that you would
Yes.
love. It's like I compare it to like being in a foxhole with
Yes.
another soldier, to
Yes.
just like you're fast friends because you're in this
Mhm.
traumatic thing together, and here we
Mhm.
go, let's do it, let's go.
Yes.
So anyway, I just felt to see started learning things like when you would post, I would speak it back as a prayer.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah. And I would respond every day with like, okay, Lord, here's my prayer. And I would basically didn't know it at the time, but basically I was just saying God's words back to him. And
Yes.
that's a form of agreement. And so, and then watching these other pastors and things like that, I would learn about like intercession and praying for the nation, like
Mm.
Dutch Sheets. Like he's perfect
Yes.
example. Like he
Oh,
is
yeah.
interceding for our nation. And so I started following him every day and doing his
Mhm.
decrees. I started watching Tim Sheets. Pretty much he's my pastor,
Yes.
I would say. I watch him every single
Yeah.
Sunday. He's just absolutely amazing. He
It
has been
is.
a lifeline in all of this, teaching us what God is saying for the present word of the Lord. And so he would do declaration. He's very prophetic.
Mhm.
He's probably, I think he's probably apostle, but he speaks a lot of prophecies, and then he would guide us to like, this is what we're going to make declarations about.
Mhm.
And so then we were just saying all these great things. And then like I watched Robin Bullock a lot, and he would talk a lot about like go to the Bible and find a verse that whatever you're talking, like whatever you're concerned about, go find a verse and stand on it, say it back.
Yes.
And so lots of different people, lots of different strategies, like worship. I never knew worship was like warfare. That is
Yes.
something that I learned. So just I started watching all these different people, and they started teaching me all these really great strategies from God on how we
Yes.
do this like spiritual battle. And that's really what I learned we were in, is like this
Yeah.
isn't about a president. This isn't about a Republican or Democrat. This is evil trying to take over our country. And if we do not stand up, we are going to be in really bad trouble. And so I just started reading my Bible differently. I started praying
Yes.
differently. I started talking differently, and people started to see a really big change in me. And I think the devil did not like that. So this takes me
Say
up
yeah.
to, yeah. So this takes me up to, this was February of 2021. And this was the night that, where I was assaulted, because I really kind of felt like I was on, in terms of my marriage, like this cusp of a breakthrough, because I felt like this could be the thing that was the plateau breaker. We were finally aligned on a lot of our like viewpoints. And like he had been following the Q stuff and all that, and like would try to like tell me things. And I'd be like, no, that's crazy. Like, no, 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 no. And I couldn't hear it. But now I was like, oh, you were right. So there was a lot of kind of healing on that front. And I just felt like if we could keep going in that front, then we could,
Yes.
and again, the devil doesn't like that. He just, I think he saw the unity was coming and we were kind of getting
Mhm.
along more than he preferred.
Mhm.
And so I feel like he thought he needed to get involved in things. And so the night started just like any other fight, and then I start with my boundary things, like things I've done 100,000 times before. Okay, you're being mean. You're saying mean things. I'm going to take the kids and I'm going to go for a while and I'll be back. But this time, he didn't allow that. And I think what the big difference was too was his mom had died in September of 2020. And that was like a huge straw that broke the camel's back in a way. I think her death just kind of brought up a lot of stuff that hadn't been dealt with, and a lot of wounds, and a lot of, I think there's probably a little bit of like unforgiveness that he kind of gave stronghold in his life. I didn't know any of this at the time, but looking back, I can kind of see we've
Mhm.
had a lot of teaching from God on forgiveness and how important that is. And if you don't, then you allow the devil into your life. And I think that's what happened with him. And so this period was just very, very hard. You're, trying to tell your babies that they're not going to see their grandma anymore is just heart wrenching, absolutely heart wrenching. And we were planning a funeral at 34 years old. Like, I don't know how to plan a funeral.
Yeah.
Just some of those things that you never think you're going to have to deal with at
Yeah.
such a young age. Um, and so I don't know, I was trying to help him through this period of time. I knew this was going to be a problem. I knew he had demons from his past, but I also didn't know yet about like authority. I didn't know
Mhm.
like all of those kinds of things. And so I really wasn't
Yeah.
super effective at it. Or else I would have been like casting out demons, but I didn't know that amount
Uh-uh.
yet. And obviously I wasn't
Yeah.
meant to know yet. So it's all in God's timing. But so we were trying to leave, and I knew this was like state of mind. And so I was like not interested in escalating anything. And I was just like, we're going. We're going. We'll be back. You can have your little fight with yourself. And once you've calmed down, we can discuss this. But then he didn't want to leave. And it was all about the kids leaving. The kids were going to stay. The kids were going to stay. And he was like, I'm going to call the police and tell them you're kidnapping the kids. And it was all about the kids.
Mhm.
And I was like, the kids are terrified right now. We're not staying. And so when we tried to leave, he like put his hand on my son's arm. And as a mom, you're just like, get your hand off my child. Like you just go into mama bear mode. And I'll never forget my son's face. He looked at me, these like giant eyes, like, what do I do? Because I was telling him to go and dad was holding him. And so I was trying to let him like get him off my son. And then just instantly, I mean, I was holding the baby. I had bags and purses and coats. I mean, it was cold outside. It was February, trying to get, three kids, like herding them out the door. Didn't think it was going to be a problem. Done it 1,000 times. And then he's turning on me and he's attacking me and he's got me by the throat. I didn't have a chance there was no words. Like you try to scream, nothing comes out. You try to just like, scratch him, whatever you can do. He was so strong, like superhuman strong. There was no stopping him. And he was just, the kids were watching this whole entire thing, screaming, begging him to stop. I mean, this went on. I started to lose consciousness. So he kept like pushing me back into the house the whole time. I had to kind of like, I started to lose strength because I didn't have any air. So I kind of like set everything down and like he kind of lost his grip for a second. And then I was able to get like one like half breath in. And then he was just like right on me again. And he just kept going and he would not let go. And so it finally started things like it started to dim and it started to go black. And I really felt like I was going to die. I remember I wasn't laying, he was kind of like holding me up, but I was like horizontal and I could hear my kids just screaming bloody murder. And I will never forget those. You just you can't forget it. It's just ingrained in your brain. But it's just like they were just begging him to stop hurting me. And he just couldn't hear any of it. He was just in this rage. And so I'm just laying there like, how am I going to protect them now? Like I'm going to be dead. And my body started to like, we actually have like physiological reactions to not having air and things started to go dark. And I truly believed I was going to die right there on my kitchen floor. And then just as suddenly as he attacked me, he let me go. And it was right before I lost consciousness. And I know that because I was able to get away from him. I mean, I am not athletically inclined at all. And I was running like adrenaline fueled panic, running away from him. I remember like grabbing my phone off the floor. It had fallen during all of this. I remember my kids standing there screaming. I tried to call 911. Of course, you're like fumbling to get it off lock. And then he like hit the phone out of my hand. And I was like, okay, we have to get out of this house right now. There's no time for calling this. So I start screaming at my kids, like, get to the van, get to the van. And this whole time, like, you can't breathe. Like, he crushed my trachea. I'm like spurting, like, it's all hoarse. You can't even talk. And then, so my older two kids go to the car but they leave the little 1 year old, 2 year old standing there screaming. So I'm like, get your sister, get your sister, this whole thing. And so then Adam and I are kind of like doing this like cat and mouse thing in the living room. And I truly believe that my guardian angels like held him back because he just let me run. I just saw a break and I was like, run, ran to the car, threw open the door. You know, there was no like coats, shoes. There was no like shutting of doors. It was just like fuel. Luckily, my car keys must have been in the van. And I just threw it in reverse and I think the garage door was open. I don't even remember, but it's just like, get out, get out, get out. Kids that were like shutting the doors and I was driving. I didn't even care. It was so panicked. I've never been so scared in my entire life. And I drove straight to the police station.
Wow.
I called them on my way. I did have my phone still. So yeah, I feel like God held back whatever that was so I could get
Yeah.
out. And then my keys happened to just be in the car. I grabbed my phone. I saw on my phone, like when you're in adrenaline, like you wouldn't just notice something laying there. So I felt like I had all the pieces that I needed to get to the police station. And I reported him to the police. And it was, I mean, I had this moment of like, am I really going to call the police on my husband? And I'm like, he just tried to kill me. Yes,
Yes.
I am, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so he was arrested that night for 2 Class D felonies, which sounded really bad to me. I was just like, oh my gosh. So we're sitting there. We were there for a long time at the police station, statements and photographs. And I mean, my neck was just like completely all red and bruised and, you know, scratched up. And so we're sitting there and finally starting to calm down. I get out of the car to check on the kids because they were all sitting in their car seats, no buckles on. They're just like terrified. Like, what just happened? I'll never forget my 2 year old. I opened it up and she's sitting in her car seat with her pajamas and her diaper because it was time for her to get ready for bed. And so she was like waiting to get her pajamas on when all this was going down. And she's just sitting there like, oh my God, just totally traumatized,
Mm-hmm.
totally traumatized. And so it's dark outside I think because of COVID, they didn't let us go inside. So we sat in
Mhm.
the van the whole time. Luckily, I had like a video, so I could like watch a video. But we were there for like 2 hours and get out to check on him. And I realized my daughter has a black eye.
No.
And you just, again, it's like I can handle a lot, but when you hurt my kid, you just, there's a whole nother level. And
Yeah.
so then we had a whole nother round of like, oh my gosh, now we got to do more pictures and the kids now involved. And then because of the child being involved, DHS was now involved again. And so it was just very hard, a very hard evening to say the
To
least.
say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're there with the police. Obviously he's arrested. So I felt safe at that point.
Yes.
The whole time I was like looking behind me. I'm like, he's gonna come, like find me. I didn't know what was gonna happen, but I was
Yeah.
scared. And so I felt, okay, he's in jail. We're good for the night at least. We can go
Mhm.
home. I took the kids home. I actually had a family member come, and my parents were out of town at that time. Oh my gosh. So I actually called Adam, my husband's family member, because I'm
Okay.
like, I felt it was a strategy from God, actually, looking back.
Okay.
I feel like this was something that was supposed to happen because I'm like, I want them to see
Mm-hmm.
their eyes
Mm-hmm.
what had happened. And so they came over, they made sure we were safe. We put a movie on for the kids, told everything what was going on. You finally get to bed and you just lay there and it's like, your husband is in jail. Your children are completely traumatized. What do you do now? And I just laid in my bed and I just cried out to God, like cried out like I have never cried out before. Just,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just laying there. And over the next couple of months, I really began to realize that I believe I saw a demon manifest on my
Yeah.
husband right like the second before he attacked me.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because there was a look of evil come over that I
Mm-hmm.
get goosebumps even when I just right now.
Yeah.
There is a level of evil that exists in this world that most people have no idea about. And I saw it that night. And that's how I believe my guardian angels protected me and got me out.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew because of that, that this was not going to be easy. This
Yeah.
wasn't just like, oh, we lost his temper, all these things.
Yeah.
And so I got out of my bed the next morning and I started this habit, I guess. It started that next morning and I've done it ever since. I get up every day and I say, Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, give me the strength, wisdom, courage, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is that I need for that day.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
asked for it. I asked for it. And I learned that he will give it to you.
Yes.
If you ask for it, he will give it to you. And so I had questions on like, why is this happening? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was obedient to you. I did what you said. And now I have
Mm-hmm.
all these horrible things happening. How could somebody who claimed to love me be so cruel? And so I just kind of
Yeah.
went on this journey of figuring out these things. And I found all the answers in the Bible, that Jesus said the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
God. It's like, why you didn't, I knew
Yeah.
he didn't do this to me. That was
No.
the devil that did this to me. But
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, okay, why do you allow these things? You could have
Yeah.
stopped that. You could have stopped that. That didn't never have to happen, but why? And so then I kind of went down this journey of figuring out that, well, it builds us up. It creates us into these warriors. And I think I'm a perfect example of that because I have literally become a warrior now
Yes,
for
you
God.
have.
Whew, it doesn't come without hardship. It doesn't come when
Yeah.
life is easy and things are just working. Like you have to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to fight. You have to learn how to have grit. You have to learn how to get
Yes.
up every single day when it's so hard and
Wow.
choose God. You have to, it's an active
Yes.
choice. And even when you
Yes.
don't feel it, if you say it, you will start to feel it. And like these are all the things that I started to learn as I
Mm-hmm.
did this every single day. And so really just continued on the path I was already on, just in a different viewpoint now. But I had been on this stand up and speak the truth. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to just do that with
Yeah.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt a lot of pressure to just brush stuff under the rug, make his life easier. So he'll come home, like the whole point was like, get him home. And I was just like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm called to do. And so I would talk to DHS and I would talk to criminal attorneys and I would talk to the police. And I would not, I was very careful. I didn't want to go the other way and embellish
Mm-hmm.
and, but I spoke the truth, the real unbiased truth. And it actually also helped because my husband had actually called his stepdad, like right after he did this to me.
Mm-hmm.
He called, and I didn't know this at the time, I learned it later. He called him and basically admitted that he had choked me. And he
Oh,
said it in not so nice words.
wow.
Um, so I had all this evidence basically. I had this, my neck was like, I had pictures. Like my
Yeah.
daughter has a black eye. So it was not a he said, she said. It was very clear cut that he
Mm-hmm.
had done this. He was guilty. It was his first offense. So, we started to have these conversations with like the district attorney and stuff like, what do you want to see happen? And of course, they're your lawyer. So you don't have a lawyer, but the state of Iowa is your lawyer. So it's kind of
Oh,
weird.
yeah.
And they're going to do what they want to do, but they will consult you and like kind of get your opinion on things. And basically, I was said, I want him held responsible because this is bad, but I
Mm-hmm.
also don't think he deserves to go to prison or, like we still need him around. We still need the support. The kids need to still need a dad, but it needs to be safe. It needs to be safe. And so the other part that was really hard too is the arrest had gotten picked up by like a local paper. And
Oh,
so like all of my friends, all of my family saw that. And so of
wow.
course people are just like, what's going on? Like everyone knows,
Yeah.
like you can't just like keep it to like 5 people. This is happening. Like everyone knows. I like the next day at daycare, one of the daycare teachers obviously had seen the article and she just came up to me and was just like giving me a hug and like all these things. And so I didn't have the choice to like keep it on the down low. It was like, oh, we're going there. Okay. So, but again, I just refused to bow. I just kept going with the truth. Um, and it was pretty much, I mean, he would be stupid not to plead guilty because there's all this evidence, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he did plead guilty. He ended up getting 2 aggravated misdemeanor charges. And then his sentence was 2 years of probation. So it felt like a bit of a slap on the wrist to me.
Yeah.
But it was his first offense. He hadn't done some of these other things before. And so I don't know, this whole time, I just kept expecting him to own his actions. He pled guilty, like you can admit
Yeah.
what you did. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and he just never would. He still lies to people. He's still lying about it. Much later, I got the official police report and found out that he actually accused me of hurting him.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
it's just I didn't know that until later, but it's like it's all just pointed to the fact that he is not willing to own this. He's not willing to be held responsible. So this was hard, but this was hard for me to grasp at this time. I really thought like he was gonna come home and change, and
Mm-hmm.
at least that's what I wanted. I wanted him to do all that, and he
Yeah.
just didn't. And so he was also taking all of our money at this time. He had all these lawyers because he had to defend himself, so he had to hire a lawyer. So he took most of our savings almost immediately after he was
Oh,
arrested.
no.
He was paying child support, but he was not paying any of our mutual bills. And he had things like a 4-wheeler and this like brand new tractor that he had just bought and like things that were his toys.
Yes.
And so I was paying all those things. And I was like asking people, like, help me stop him from taking money out of our account.
Yes.
Like, how can I stop this?
Yeah.
And no one would help me. No one would help. The district attorneys, DHS, I couldn't talk to him. So that was the other part of this. There was a no contact order put into
Okay.
place to protect me and the kids.
Hmm.
Um, so we couldn't even talk. So at this time, like, I still have never had a person to person phone call, nothing with my ex-husband since he's done this.
Wow.
Nothing. Never. So all this financial stuff is happening. And then we went on vacation over the 4th of July. So he was sentenced in June. And then we went on vacation in July, beginning of July. And he broke into the house. And honestly, I don't think he expected anyone to know that he broke in, but I found out and figured out pretty quickly who it was and what had happened. And so I alerted the police and this DA that I had been in contact with, I let them know because basically, as a subject to his probation, he had all these things he had to adhere to. And this
Hmm.
was he was violating those by
Hmm.
doing this. And so I didn't know. We were obviously out of town. I don't know. He knew we were going to be out of town. I told him because I was taking the kids. So I was trying to be nice, like, hey, I'm taking your kids out of town.
Yeah.
And then he used it against me.
Hmm.
Um, so I finally get back home. I'm like, what is going on? Like the story I was told wasn't adding up. So I'm like, okay, what's the real reason? And I find out that he had locked me out of the safe.
Uh,
And the friend that was sent into the house refused to give me that code. And I mean, I was like, you don't understand. Like, my next call is to the police. You better give me the code to my property. Like,
hmm.
I am not messing around with this. I think he hung up on me, I think is how he responded to that. So calling the police. Then that was like a whole nother criminal matter because then we had a no
Hmm.
contact order violation, we had a probation violation. He got a couple more days in jail for that one, and then he just got another slap on the wrist for because he pled guilty. So just all very uh, disheartening. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
why is all of this continuing to be coming against me? Like, why are we not
Hmm.
stopping these things? And then, of course, I had all the financial stuff. Like, all this stuff is going on. I still got to pay bills. I still got to get groceries for my kids to eat
Yes.
food and buy them clothes. And luckily, I thank God for my parents. They really kept me afloat during this time. And I did have a little bit of emergency fund, which is another God story.
Uh,
So right before I left on this vacation, I heard very clearly, take money out of the safe. And I was like,
wow.
no, I don't need that much money. Like, I'm not doing that. That's going to get stolen. You come up with like all the excuses why that's not a good idea.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
just kept hearing it, take money out of the safe. I was like, okay, this is obviously not my thought. This is Holy Spirit telling me to do this. So I did it, go on vacation, never use the money. So I'm like, what did I need this money for? you know? And so then I get back and it's like, oh, this is why I needed the
Mhm.
money. So I had that small emergency fund. I had my parents helping, but it was just a really bad place.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I really felt I was learning about tithing and I really felt God pressing me to tithe. And so
Mhm.
I was trying to give and I wasn't giving to my church that I wasn't going to anymore. I was giving to the people that I was watching every day.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, Lord, I don't have any money, but I'm going to continue to tithe because you told me to tithe. So I'm going to keep going with that. And I mean, this was a good 6 months, a good 6 to 9 months of just trying to survive, just
Yes.
every day getting up, trying to survive. And then when this happened, I realized he's not turning. He's still unsafe. He's stealing all my money. I have to do something. So I went and filed for a legal separation. I
Mhm.
found a lawyer, which just that, like just finding how do you find a lawyer? It's just like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So anyway, found filed a legal separation. I really felt strongly I was not supposed to file a divorce. I don't really
Okay.
know why. I don't know why. But my husband said he wanted a divorce. So it didn't really matter at that point. And that was really hard for me to hear. Like,
Mhm,
I was like on my knees crying on that one. Like,
mhm,
you've done all these horrible things and now you're divorcing me, kind of
mhm.
thing. And so that really set into motion then like an entire year. It was an entire year
Yes.
of trauma. Just
Yeah.
and then now I had lawyer bills on top of everything else. I think I had to pay like 5,000 or something like that just to
Yeah.
like get the lawyer.
Yes.
And my husband was just like so ridiculous in all of his like, I have to have this, and he would not bend on it. So like all of the mediation would just like fall through. So we ended up having to go to a judge to set even just like the temporary matters. And so basically then this judge just did so many horrible things. She was just so bad. And she really enabled my husband's abusive behavior and gave him just like normal visitation, did not care that he had punched a kid. None of these kinds of things mattered to her. And so we
Wow.
just went on this really horrible journey. Sorry, I'm trying to plug my computer in here because it's telling me it's
Okay.
gonna
Oh, yeah.
going to die.
Don't die.
So anyway, that then when the kids are involved, then you start to, they're now subjected to all this trauma.
Yes.
They had already been traumatized by that whole
Yeah.
thing, but now this was like every day, every week, they were. And I tried so hard to ask, like, will you just like let my mom go to the first visitation and just,
Mhm.
and all this is through lawyers. And it was just like every request, no, 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 no. He had all this power because this judge gave him all this power, and he just had no reason to be mercy. There was no mercy. There was no flexibility. There was nothing. And so obviously that came through my kids. And so then we just had like the first visit was my birthday. So on my birthday, I had to drive my children to a family member. I couldn't even see him at this time. And she took my kids and they were gone for 3 hours. I didn't know where they were going. I didn't know who they were going to be with. And like my mom took me to dinner because she's like, it's your birthday. I'm not letting you be alone. And this is like obviously very traumatic. But like that was my 36th birthday. And so I learned that like I had exhausted all the things. I had lawyers, I had judges, I had police officers. They were not protecting my kids at DHS. Like they were not protecting my kids. And so
Yeah.
I just had to turn them over to God. And
Mhm.
I would pray over them before they go. I would, I'd plead the blood of Jesus over them.
Yes.
I would send my angels with them to protect them while they were gone. And then I'd get home and I remember just like sitting on the floor of my girls' room, and they were just like crying, crying. And I would just sit and rock them. And I would just like pray over them, and I would bind shock and trauma and just like bind all these horrible
Mhm.
things. And then I would release peace and
Mhm.
joy and like just all these good things from God on them. And it would work. But then 3 days later, we were doing
In
it
the
all over
cycle
again.
again.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I don't know. It was just so hard. And then we kind of went into this like he would use the courts to abuse me.
Mhm.
So like he filed a motion with a judge to make me do the visitation drop-offs directly with him and not a family member. That was like I was so upset about that one. Like I don't want to see you. I don't want to have nothing to do with you. You
Mhm.
have done so much problems. I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Um
It's
and so
not
then
safe. That is just not
right.
safe.
No.
Yeah.
And so we finally agreed on like a spot that was public. And so then we could just park and the kids could just run between the cars. But then we were having things like the little one didn't want to go. It's like, what do you do? What do you do then? You can't
Yeah.
come over to me and I can't go over to you. If you come over here, I'm calling the police. So how do we solve this problem? And so it was just this like lawyer things. And all this time I'm like hemorrhaging money, hemorrhaging money.
Yes.
And so we finally got like a custody agreement in place. We did a mediation for that. So that really kind of cut down on some of the stuff. It was a hard agreement to adhere to, but
Mhm.
whatever. It was, we were not arguing over about it anymore. And then we could not figure out the financial stuff. He just didn't want to have to pay anything. It was like, it was all his, it was none of mine. And there was just not, and it's like, this is not reality. This is not how the law is considered. And so really had to fight that. But then he would do things like I don't know, he was blocked on all my social media, but somebody was taking screenshots of my posts and I would be getting them through my lawyer. And basically it was an intimidation thing to
Yeah.
say,
I'm watching.
yeah. And so, I kind of felt like this, like you feel like, well, what should I stop sharing all this stuff?
Mhm.
Should I stop sharing the truth? Should I stop sharing my story, what's going on? And it's like, I would just like dig in twice as hard. It's like, okay, you're
Mhm.
going to threaten me, then let's go. I'm just going to start telling more truth.
Mhm.
And so I just refused to bow. I just absolutely
Mhm.
refused to bow. And it was just all of these things, and at this, keep in mind, all the crap in the whole world is going on at the same time. This is not
Yeah.
just this in isolation. I'm dealing with work, I'm dealing with
Yes.
all the other things in the world that are
Yeah.
absolutely crazy during these years.
Yeah.
So just so much. And really at work, it was really getting bad too. So we had been home, it was fine. But then they called us all back into the office.
Hmm.
And then they promptly put us all under these like rules for like masking. And they were definitely ready to do mandates. Like if the Supreme Court did not end that, that would have been something I would have had to deal with. But I would not wear a mask. I just simply would not. And I'm definitely not taking anything like that.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't have done that either. But even the mask, like it started to be clear that I was not getting the shots. So I definitely should have been wearing a mask. And then it was like all these conversations with like just humiliating conversations with my boss and HR and all these things. Like, why are you not? And I was like, well, one of the real reasons is like I was strangled. So I don't really like to put something over my face. And besides that, I just have all these like religious beliefs that don't let me bow to that kind of thing. So I'm not going to do it. And so they did end up giving me a religious exemption, but that meant that I couldn't leave my desk. So, and I couldn't tell anyone that I had a religious exemption. So that's why I was not leaving my desk. And so I had this very surreal, like 3 or 4 months of like all the meetings I was a part of, I had to do online. I couldn't go to like holiday stuff. I couldn't go to like team meetings. And everyone's like, why is she sitting in her desk? Like people looked like at me like I had 3 heads. And then I also was supposed to get a promotion. We were coming up on this like performance review time, and I was supposed to get a promotion, and then I didn't get that.
Hmm.
And so I was just like, oh my gosh, now it's the job. It's like it's been all the things. So,
Yes.
and then at the same time, I like at the house, so we had an acreage. And obviously my husband is not there. So it's all me.
Yeah.
I couldn't even like mow the acreage. Like it was just
Yeah.
like so much for me to handle by myself.
Yeah.
And then all these things started breaking. So like I was like wiring kitchen lights and trying to get my dishwasher to work, and my dryer was not drying. So I had to have someone come look at my dryer. We had a bathroom in the basement that needed to be renovated. It had this giant hole in the ceiling. And I knew it was looking like we're gonna have to sell the house. So I was like, okay, I got to start renovating a bathroom. Luckily, I had some people in my family that helped because
Uh,
I don't know how to do like a new shower and a new
no.
toilet and like all these things. And I found like a whole wall of mold in my basement.
Oh no.
plumbing problems. It was just like one thing after another. And it just never ended. My van needed a new transmission. That cost me another $5,000. So, needless to say, I needed some daily upholding.
Amen.
Yeah. And so that's really what I would go over to, like your word. I'm like, even there were some days where like I couldn't even get over to Twitter. Like I couldn't even get Twitter pulled up on my phone. I was just so much struggling. And like my mom would like send me your word for the day in a
Oh,
text
that's so sweet.
because she knew where I was and she knew your word would like bring me back. And so I just remember taking my kids to the park and I would just sit on the bench and just like read your word and just like bawl. Just like
Mhm.
not caring who else was watching me at the park. I would just sit there and cry. And I think this is really where my faith started growing in the prophetic too, because you would say something. And then in order to like get my faith built up every day, I was listening to so many things. And then someone over here would say something that was similar. And I was like, that's what Diana said yesterday or whatever. So I started getting all these confirmations and I would start
Mhm.
to share them. And I'm sure you remember some of those. And I would have like some of the coolest ones. Like I still remember that one that you had that was eat dust,
Oh, yes, yes.
because we had gone to this farmer's market and my mom was with me. So she saw this. I read your word to her in the car on the way to the
Okay,
farmer's market.
okay.
We're walking through all the tents. We pull up to this little tent. It's like clothing with stuff on it. And literally, like right in front of my face is this onesie and it says, "Eat my dust."
That
I'm
is
like,
so awesome.
look at this. Like, I just read that to you. That is the title of that prophecy. And now we're standing here. We stopped at this tent. It's right under my head. Look at this. So I just started having, like, it was very clear. Like, this is God.
Mhm.
God is saying these things through
Mhm.
you, I was watching like a ton of prophets on Elijah streams. And then Patty started like sharing her words
Yes,
at
yes.
roughly about the same time. And so it was just all these confirmations. Like I remember
Mhm.
another one, I would be journaling
Mhm.
because I had to like keep up with like all this stuff. So I would journal it and I would be like, look down at my Bible or my journal, and there would be like a Bible verse in the top corner, like printed in my journal. And then that would be the Bible verse that the prophet would like
Oh, wow.
bring up.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
this stuff doesn't just
Wow.
happen. This just doesn't just happen. So
Wow.
and I just started to learn so many different things, like what we had talked about already. But then God really started to talk to me about restoration
Mm.
because I had walked through like losing all these things. And so,
Well, I would say you definitely were going through the valley of the shadow of death.
yeah,
If
yeah,
your angels hadn't been there to protect you,
I would have died.
you would
Yeah,
have. Yeah.
yeah, I really
What
would have.
what rings out to me so much as you're sharing, Callie, is that nobody was there for you. The judges weren't there, the lawyers weren't there, the
Yep.
system was
The
not
system did not
for
work.
you. It was not for the one who was in need of protecting.
Mm-mm.
And that is a real reflection of where we are as a nation. And no wonder God is coming to rescue us and
Mm-hmm.
restore us. It needs to happen.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like I was meant to see all those things firsthand. I
Yes.
remember even having call with DHS, and the lady was very transparent with me. She's like, I cannot do anything. The laws, the things, the rules that I have, I cannot help you. I'm pretty much worthless in this entire situation. So I'm like, well, why are you even here?
Uh, Good question.
So, but yeah, so it was like the judges, and then I think it was Robin Bullock had this. I don't even remember when it was, but it was after I was going through all this, and he was talking about taking people to the courtroom of heaven.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, I'm doing it. Like no one else is helping me, just like what you're saying, Diana. So I was like, I took every single one of those. I made a list of people, judges and lawyers and all these people who just like did not righteously act.
Mm-hmm.
And I took them to the courtroom of heaven. I did. And I was like, Lord, you know their heart. I don't know. Maybe they're just stupid. Maybe they're nefarious. I don't
Yeah.
know. You know their
Yeah.
hearts. So I am asking you to
Mhm.
judge them based on your knowledge of them.
Yes.
And then it took a long time. It took a really long time. But like 2 years later down the road, I'm talking to my lawyer, totally not even about this. I actually had gotten a will done and I was in the office signing this will, and he just happened to like knew I was there. So he came to say hi. We were chatting and he just off the cuff mentions, hey, you know that judge that you had? They just forced her to retire.
Oh my goodness, Callie.
Yeah. And of course, you're sitting there like,
Wow.
what? What? And he kind of gave me the backstory. I guess lawyers can like anonymously rate judges. And
Ah.
so she had like gotten like all these horrible ratings, I guess. But
Ah.
I was like, inside, I was like, oh no, I know that was my prayer. I know that
Uh-huh.
was my prayer. I
Yeah.
know that's what that was.
Yes.
And so, and then later I looked, like maybe a few months after that, I looked, and the DA that I had worked with, he
Hmm.
wasn't in there anymore. He moved on to greener
Wow.
pastures somewhere else, because I was now working with a new
Hmm.
DA. So I started to learn like when God, it takes time. That is the thing that, and that
Mhm.
is the hard part. But I saw it in
Mhm.
my own life. And so now I know it's going to happen in our nation. It's
Mhm.
just taking time to work it all the way through, and all the
Yeah.
things in the natural have to work together to make it happen. But I know
Mhm.
God has set all those things up for our nation as well,
Mhm.
because I've seen it in my personal life. And so all
Yes.
this was supposed to show me, for where we're going. Who knows
Mhm.
what's ahead? Like, if I stop and think about it, I get a little like, oh my gosh. But I've learned the strategies by walking all these things. I'm pretty sure I
Yes.
had COVID. Couldn't talk for like weeks.
Wow.
And I'm worshiping. Like I can't even talk, but I'm like worshiping. I probably sounded like a drowned cat, but I know that worship is warfare. And so I'm standing
Yes.
there and I'm like praising God and I'm worshiping,
Mhm.
and I survived. I didn't I didn't take any medicine. So, things like that. I just began to see, you
Yeah.
know, it would something bad would come, and I would just turn it over to God and be like, okay.
Yeah.
And I found really like I found freedom in that, because then it wasn't my
Yes.
problem anymore. And
Hmm.
every time something bad would happen, I'd be like, okay, God, this is your problem.
Yes.
You need to come fix this because it's not mine. I already gave it to you. So please deal with it. You got mail. You got mail to deal with here. So, and tithing was another really cool story. So I talked about how I felt like I was supposed to tithe.
Yes.
I had been really hard pressed, but I was still doing it. So, but it took like 6, 9 months. But then I went and got my taxes done. And this is really what had like my first breakthrough, I'd call it. Um, and so I went and got my taxes done. We were separated. So my accountant was like, we're going to do this, this, and this a little differently this year. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm just trusting you. I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And so he files it all, whatever, calls me a couple of weeks later, let me know my refund amount, and lets me know the amount. And I just burst into tears because it was $13,000.
Whoa.
That was like way more than any refund I'd ever gotten in the past.
Wow.
And that was probably the biggest amount of money that I have ever received in like a
Wow.
lump sum. Like, and I needed that. Like, I so needed that money.
Wow.
And then a part that I forgot to tell earlier was when my husband broke into the house, he had stolen money out of the safe. And that's why the safe was locked. I had to hire a locksmith to come
Mhm.
and drill it out, get it opened. I finally realized that he had taken our entire like cash
Mhm.
thing. And I don't know exactly how much was in there, but it was about $13,000. And so
Whoa.
that was my second thought when I had this call from this accountant, was this was almost the exact amount of money that
Wow.
was stolen from me.
Ah.
So I really saw God show up for me in lots of ways.
Mm.
Um, lots of ways. And then even from that, I really felt like I heard, like God said, give $500 to this church that I had been going to.
Wow. Wow.
And I was like, I just got all this money. I need
Yeah.
it. I can't let
Yeah.
that. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. I just kept hearing it and kept hearing. I'm like, okay, all right, you wore me down. So I did it. So I don't know. And that really took me through like the divorce was final in July of 2022. Um, Still hard, we fought over stuff, but where we ended with the finances was pretty fair. I got some of the stuff back.
Oh, good.
I got some of his toys because he hadn't been paying all those bills. So
Ah.
basically, then I got to sell the toys, and that like recompensed me for everything I had paid. So it was fair. It was done. It was done. Thank goodness it was
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
But then we had to go into this hard part of selling the house with the divorce. And that
Mhm.
was really hard because he tried to make it as difficult as possible. And it was also terrible selling conditions. The market is so bad right now.
Mhm.
I'm sure everyone knows that. And then I had to pack up everyone's stuff, just so much work.
Yes.
It took 7 months to sell the house.
Wow.
You're doing showings every multiple
With
times a week.
kids.
Kids are ruining it and you have to
Yes.
clean. I mean, luckily I was not even at home at this point, working from home. So I was like going to work and coming home and like cleaning my house, and it was
Wow.
just so exhausting. I would just pray every time, Lord, please let these be the people that are buying this house because
Yeah.
I can't do this. And we kept having to lower the price because market, interest rates kept going
Yes.
up, and it's just how it was. And so I got to thinking, like, well, maybe I'm not meant to sell this. Like, maybe that's why this is not working. Cause I've kind of
Mhm.
learned that, like, if something is not working, that it's
Mhm.
may not be
Mhm.
God's plan. So I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to like buy him out. So I start like going to the bank and like trying to figure out if I could like buy him out and what I'd have to give him for a payout and all this
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And then that all kind of just fell apart. He was kind of a ridiculous about it all, not even
Mhm.
surprising. And so I was like, okay, that's not that was not God's plan. So
Yeah.
I just decided, I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna have to wait. I've done everything else. I've turned it over to him. It must just be delay. And I think we can all think of a time where it's just like there are times of delay. I think we've been walking through one of those the last 2, 3 years in
We
this
sure
mission.
have.
So, and then all this time too, I'm trying to find a new job because
Yeah.
everything that happened there, I didn't get this promotion. It just felt dead. It just did not feel
Mhm.
like I was supposed to be there anymore. And every time I'd get an interview, I'd really hand it over to God. And I started this thing where it's like, okay, if you don't want me, if this is not for me, shut the door. I don't want it. If it's not for you,
Mhm.
if it is, open the door. Please open this door. And like every time, door shut, door shut, door
Okay.
shut, door shut. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry I said that. And I just like started to feel like a little desperate. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this doesn't feel right here. Like you're in that tension of like, it's not right where you are, but you're obviously telling me the story is not for me. So what am I supposed to do? And about that time, my mom sends me a job description for His Glory, and it's for the marketing position. And so this was another thing I really heard clearly from God on. So I applied, I didn't hear anything back. So I thought, okay, this is just another door, you know. But then Tim Sheets had a sermon that like it was like that next Sunday, and he was given a prophecy. And in part of that prophecy, there was a phrase and it said, try the door again.
Oh,
And I'm telling you, Dana, I have never felt like what I
wow.
felt when I heard those words. It was like electricity came down my head into
Wow.
my spine and it just like radiated out of me. And I was like, that's a word from God.
Yeah.
And I just knew immediately he meant the job. Like it just came to me. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking about the job. I was
Mhm.
in church, I wasn't thinking about it. And so I was like, okay, I'll send it again. So the next morning I got up, sent my resume again, didn't really expect much. And then literally within a few days, I was being interviewed by Pastor Dave.
Yes.
And so it was just so surreal. Like I had watched him for like 2 years, really respected this guy who had been like standing up, and now like here I am potentially being able to work for him. And it's in the ministry. I mean, the name of the company is His Glory. Like, you can't get any better than that.
No.
And then he was saying things like exciting things like, I feel like maybe this was meant to be. I really like you for this thing. And he's like, I don't normally say things like that. And so, and I was like, I've been looking for a job for a long time, and God told me to apply for this. So I know it's meant to be. So, and I was just so excited when I hung up. I just felt like it just clicked. I wasn't even nervous.
Yes.
Like, I think that's the thing is like, I've always, like, I would be like, oh no, Pastor Dave interview. I wasn't even
Yeah.
nervous. It just was like so easy. So click, click, click. It just worked. And I was so excited. And so then I'm like waiting for my kids to come home after the interview, and I pull out my phone because my thing is like, I'm going to scroll through Twitter. It's probably a little bit of addiction that I need to get a handle on. But anyway, so the first thing I see is a post from Albert Milton, and it's a black, I can still see it in my head, black graphic, white words, nothing will stop my plans for your life.
Wow.
And I just like broke down. I went from like running around my house, happy, excited, to like bawling. I was like, I was just such a confirmation. I knew that was what God wanted me to do. And then
Wow.
days later, I had the job.
Wow.
And so then I was like closing down my old job, and it was the beginning of 2023. And this was really, so that was one breakthrough with the thing with the money, and then this breakthrough. And then this is really when I started to feel a shift of stuff, really like
Yes.
coming back around to the restoration. And it started with the job, obviously, and that did have a bit of a rough start. I kind of see why God had to give me that word, because I feel like I might not
Okay.
have stuck with it if
Uh-huh.
I didn't have, like, if I didn't know, because it was hard. They're a growing company,
Mm-hmm.
ministry.
Mm-hmm.
There's like things that are not perfect there, but
Yeah.
we're making it through it. And now it's like so much better than it was. But I had a rough start there. And then in March, my house sold. And
Wow.
it was like, oh my gosh, thank the Lord. I was so happy. I didn't have to do these stupid showings anymore. I didn't have this debt like holding over me. And then the closing date was set for 5/5/23, which is five. So you have always
Oh,
talked a lot about numbers. And
yes.
so I saw that as like a little God wink.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, this has grace on it. Like, this
It
is
does.
good.
It
This is
does.
good.
Yeah.
And so then I just started to look
I
for
just,
new.
okay. I just looked at my phone. It's 333. Just thought I'd put that in there.
I sorry, you cut out, Diana. What did you say?
Oh, I said I just looked at my phone and it said 333. As you're talking about 5/5.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, that totally cut out. I could not even hear.
Oh, looks like we're frozen. Oh no.
Did I
Yeah.
lose you?
All right, you back?
Yes.
Excellent. It says my internet connection is unstable. Get strong now in
Mm.
Jesus'
In
name.
Jesus' name. Amen.
All right.
So yeah, guys, I just started like the numbers and things. I think I learned a lot of that from you, Diana. And it just started to be like, oh, I'm not just noticing this time like all the time. It's like, it's not just nothing, it's
Yeah.
something.
Yes.
And so I usually started to find like there was a scripture that
Mm-hmm.
really related to it, and it was something I needed to hear. And then things like the 555 was like, okay, it's just like a little God
Yeah,
wink. It's a little
it
like,
is.
I gotcha, like you're good
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
thing. So I just kept going. I just kept going. And it's like this faith, you do need faith because you have to take the steps. And it's really
Yes.
scary. But he
It
just kept
is.
showing me, like, I'm going to come through. I'm going to come through. I'm going to come through. I'm
Wow.
going to come through. And he did. And the same thing with the house. I found a new house.
Mhm.
I put an offer in on one, told me no. I'm like, okay, that must be God's will. It wasn't
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
So then I found another one, but it wasn't built. So I had to live with my parents over the summer. But it just clicked. Like, I got a lower interest rate, and like it
Uh,
had everything that I wanted. It has this
wow.
beautiful office that I'm sitting in right now. I didn't
Oh,
have an office before. Like, I was sitting in
wow.
my living room. I had a tiny, tiny, tiny little closet and bedroom in my old house. I literally have the bedroom I have now is 2 or 3 times the size, and I
Wow.
have two walk-in closets.
Yes.
So
God
it
is
just was like,
good. And
yeah,
that
it
was
was
the
like,
double. That's the double, Callie.
yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is like, I was like, and these are the things I had prayed for. Like, my kids all need a
Wow.
room. I need
Yes.
space. I need an office. And like, here was God coming with the perfect solution.
Wow.
And I'll never
Wow.
forget the lady. I talked to like the sales lady, and she's like, and this one, because it wasn't built, it was nothing.
Yeah.
So you just have like pictures and stuff. And she's like, and this one's gonna have blue. And I just looked at my mom and I was like, sold, because that's my color. Like, that is my
Aw.
deal. So anyway, it just everything worked.
Yeah.
And then the summer with my parents was really good. I mean, we were 4 people in 2 rooms. So that was a bit of a struggle. But other than that, it was really awesome. I had like full-time help with the kids. My
Oh,
parents, I think my parents had more fun than my kids. And my
yes.
kids had a lot of fun, like hanging out with grandma and grandpa every day. So
Yeah.
I could save
Healing,
some,
very healing.
yes. And I saved a lot of money because I didn't have to send them to daycare.
Yeah.
And so I could just tell like that was a time that we really needed to like
Mm-hmm.
move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also really excited about the new house too, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
we were like watching it get built
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about making plans for how to decorate it. The kids were excited to have their own rooms they could decorate. And I went and I wrote Bible verses all over the studs of the
Yes.
house.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
I would just like stand and just, it was dirt. I mean, just a foundation, you know, but I was like praying over it, you know,
Uh,
and then I still had to like pay for the house. Like I signed
yes.
a offer, but I had to actually like show up at closing with a lot of money. And so I obviously had my house funds from that I sold, but then I still needed to make a lot of money. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I come up with this other money? I had this 401k. And so I was like trying to do all these different things with it. And again, doors just kept like closing. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to just take this money out and put it towards the house. But like, every financial advisor I talked to was like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I was like, that's what God is telling me to do. Like, I have to do it. And so I did it. And I'm still hoping, like, I'm still praying by faith that that does not come back to hurt me on my
Yes.
next thing. But it's like, he is big enough. He is big
Yeah.
enough to not have to have me have negative things come in my taxes
Right.
because I took money out of
Right.
my 401k. Like, he already did
Yeah.
it once. He'll do it again.
Yeah.
So I really felt a lot of acceleration on the house. Like, it was done a whole month early.
That
I had these,
never happens.
no, no. And even when the original date was so fast. So they just were just so incredibly fast.
Wow.
And then I had like everything just ticked again. I had these funds lined up and I was getting storage units and moving all of our stuff out. And it just all worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally closed on the house. Everything was there and went back home. I did have new sod. So that has kind of been something that I've been kind of walking through. It's been hard to
Yeah.
take care of and it's been very expensive to water. And so I've had some things like that. But I've even gotten a lot of favor on that. They've like forgiven some of my water bills and things like that. So,
Aw, that's beautiful.
and then the other thing that happened is my car got hit.
Ah,
So I was in a double car accident, and long story short, it's like, I see you, devil. I know you're trying to take this car away from me. And so they're wanting to like total it out instead of fix it. And they're trying to give me like low ball
yeah.
settlements and stuff like that. So I'm walking through that right now, but it's like same thing goes. Like,
Yep.
this is in God's hands. He's
Mm-hmm.
not going to let me
Mm-hmm.
end up with no vehicle or a worse
Yeah.
off vehicle. Like, I'm
Yeah.
getting double full, just like I've gotten on everything else. So now I've learned, and I've just really become this spiritual warrior. You have to walk through the hard things and you have to choose to react in the right ways.
Yes.
I feel like one of the biggest things for me was to forgive. I had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that I could have chosen to not forgive.
Yes.
And it was very hard. And I would find
Mhm.
myself thinking about that person or, whatever was going on. And it was like, nope, I choose as an act of my will to forgive this person in Jesus' name.
Mhm.
You would just
Good
stop
job.
and you would just, I've learned how to like take those thoughts captive. And so, and now I've like gotten personal prophetic words and I'll go seek God for like, I think you even taught us like go seek God for a word for the year, January
Yes.
1. And he's done that now, 2022 and 2023. And so it's just kind of been amazing to see. I'm a
Mhm.
completely different person. Like I am not the same person that I
Yeah.
was 3 years
No,
ago,
you are
even.
not. Mm-mm.
And it's everyone tells me I'm so strong, and even people that I didn't really think were paying attention, well, are paying attention. And
Yeah.
and they'll come up to me and be like, how did you do that? How are you so strong? And I just always point to God. I'm like, it is literally
Mhm.
not me. Like if it was me, I would be on my knees on the floor in a puddle.
Mhm.
I asked for God to strengthen me. And so it's
Yes.
it's God. He's
Yeah.
helping me, he's pulling me up. And every time I would get knocked down, I just get up a little bit stronger because I take it to
Yes.
him and then
Yes.
stronger and then
Yes.
stronger. And it doesn't happen
Yes.
overnight, but we've got to
Yeah.
walk through these things. We've got to hand it to God and he will take care of us. He will truly, truly take
Yeah.
care of us.
He will. It's a beautiful story, Callie. Thank you for sharing, being so open and sharing it with us. It is a great blessing. And I don't know if you heard Pastor Mike Thompson. He
Mm,
preached a message a few weeks ago that sometimes you are the prophecy and
I'll have to listen to that one.
you are actually living out what is happening in our nation. You are a
Mm,
parable, a picture of we have been helpless. Nobody, the judges, no, there's no system that has stood behind us and
mm,
supported liberty and justice and freedom. And God is
so
coming in
true.
for us. But have we been flattened? No, we
No.
are stronger. We are
Mm-hmm.
standing. And so I want everybody to take the message from this
Yeah.
incredible life. She has surrendered and she asks for help. And those are absolutely key in this season while God fights for us and reestablishes our personal lives and our nation's life. And that goes for all around the world. So,
Thank you, Diana.
Callie,
That's
thank
really
you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. As you're sharing the story, that just keeps coming to me. Oh my goodness, she's living a parable of what is happening to our nation. Our
That's
children
awesome.
are endangered and
Yeah,
traumatized. I mean, it just
it
go
really
right down the
is.
line.
It
Yeah.
really is.
So
Yeah,
thank
so
you
true.
so much for
Thank you, Diana.
sharing with us. It's been a
Yes.
blessing to have you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And as we go, we'll be back again. And until then, be blessed with his peace and his glory.